Hello, Year 7. So we carry on looking at the methods of cooking that we started last week, but focusing more on these yellow and green sections, so describing the way that cooking or heat changes food, and identifying appropriate cooking methods for a variety of different foods. So that's what we're kind of working through in today's lesson. The first thing I want you to just have a think about is, why do we cook food? So if you pause the video and just write down 3, 4, 5 different reasons why we cook food. Some are more obvious, some are less obvious. So pause the video now. Okay, so hopefully you've come up with kind of a handful of different reasons why we choose to cook food. And I think that's quite important, that there are foods that we choose to cook. They don't actually have to be cooked, but there are also some foods that do need to be cooked. So obviously the taste. So for example, I prefer toast to bread. Alright, that is partly to do with the taste, because you're adding taste whilst you're cooking it. The texture, how something feels in your mouth, to actually be able to combine some ingredients together and for that state to then stay and not kind of disappear. I mean, some of you probably do eat cake batter, but definitely tastes better once it's cooked. It's definitely safer as well. The appearance, making things look better. The palatability is kind of combining all of these words together, and it's making it more palatable, more enjoyable. And so all of those other words, so taste, texture, the appearance, and then also this last one, safety, kind of come under that palatability. The safety side of it is there are some ingredients which are actually toxic when they're raw. We don't often at home, kind of in this country, cook those from scratch. Some people do, but things like there are some beans which can be toxic if they're not cooked in the correct way. Generally speaking, we buy things like that already pre-cooked, so a tin with some beans in has already been cooked and we're just then reheating them. And it's also about kind of removing those pathogenic bacteria, that food poisoning bacteria that potentially could lead to food poisoning. So cooking food changes the food physically and chemically, and the chemical changes happen at a cellular level, but they cause the physical changes that we can see and feel. There's quite a lot of different scientific processes which we will touch on in the kind of coming weeks, and each of those different processes are shown essentially in a different kind of physical change that we can actually tangibly feel and see. So your main task for today is you're going to use the resources available to you. So there is some in the I've forgotten the word, in the section on Teams, your assignment section, where you can use some of that information. You can use information from previous lessons, and by all means you can use Google as well. And you just need to, on this slide, and I'll go through it in a bit more detail in a moment, infill what method of cooking is used for each of the different components of a full English breakfast, and then just what physical changes you see or could taste or could feel from the raw state to the cooked state. So for example, with bacon, it might be that it's physical changes, it's now crisp. Alright, that could be a physical change. I'll just quickly show you how this is going to be kind of set up. This PowerPoint will be dropped into the chat on Teams, and you will then be able to access it and kind of live edit it. So I have put kind of loads and loads of different slides on that are identical, and they all say name at the top. So when you access the document, you click the 3 black dots next to this PowerPoint and say edit on Teams. And so then you'd find a slide that just said name at the top. You would highlight name and type yours in. This is now your slide, so nobody else should then come and overwrite anything you've done. And you would just click on your boxes. And so for poached eggs, that's a nice easy one. Method of cooking is poaching. So you type poaching there, and then physical changes, you could say that the egg white turns white and firm, the egg yolk turns firm as well, etc, etc. So you can obviously have more detail than that, and then I can go through and I can see what everybody is doing all in one go and kind of give you some feedback as we go through a little bit easier. If you finish that and get all of that done, there is an extension task which I will show you here, which it's just essentially taking on the role of the teacher. So you've been asked to teach cooking methods through a practical lesson to your peers. Peers just means your friends. So you need to find a dish which uses a minimum of 3 different cooking methods in its production and label how you're actually going to teach that to your friends. By the different methods of cooking, they're those ones that we've covered last week, the ones we've kind of looked at today, so things like boiling, poaching, grilling, etc. So it needs to be a minimum of 3. It could be something like lemon meringue pie, like a standalone kind of dish, or it could be something like a full English breakfast. Obviously not that actual example, but that's kind of up to you how you want to go through for that extension task. And then just make sure you're submitting all of your work via Teams or email to me. Lovely. Thank you very much, Year 7.